Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, prepare your ear holes for the best wrestling podcast in the world. It's time for the Hard-Hitting Wrestling Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the special edition of the Hard-Hitting Wrestling Show. I'm Ovi Muniz, and waiting to enter the studio is Hector Vasquez. It has been nearly over a month of planning for Hector, as he wanted to do something special to honor his father. And what other way to use this beautiful platform to share how much he loves his dad and the bond between father and son. Father's Day is on June 21st, which falls on the third Sunday in the month of June. We're going to go back. Way back to clock. Yep, we're going to back it up to a very special day for Hector, and that is the day of January 27, 1986, in Madison Square Garden, where the WWF hosted their event featuring Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage. It was a sellout crowd with over 20,000 people in attendance. But what Hector is going to share is something bigger than wrestling. So let's bring on Hector Vasquez. How you doing, Hector?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm all right. Are you ready?
I'm ready. It's like DX. Are you ready?
Well, I mean, this is a special edition. And like I had just said earlier, you've been planning this for quite some time. I know we talked about a couple of months ago of wanting to do a tribute. You wasn't sure how to do it. And then it wasn't until like a little over a month ago that you said, hey, I have something. And what other than just doing it here, especially that this is the hard-hitting wrestling show with the hard-hitting, meaning, hey, we speak the truth with feelings and we take away of everything, which is a lesson learned. And why bother just waiting until Father's Day when we could just share it today and just celebrate this week with all the fathers and everyone playing the role as a father.
Yes, sir. And I do thank you for this opportunity to do this. You know, it's a very special time and everything. It was just this past week. It was the 3-year anniversary that I lost my dad to cancer. So, you know, and I just thank God that I have a platform like this that I can share my story. So, and hopefully it will inspire other people listening or watching.
Okay. Before you do get started on your show, I wanted the people to see the background. So I'm going to go ahead and tune you out real quick. Okay, now that we glance at it, I love your hat, man. What year was that picture?
I can't exactly try to think off the top of my head what year it was, but it was for a Sweet 16 party. A friend of mine, he was turning 16. So, you know, I was just one of the guys that she invited to be part of it, the celebration. And that was the uniform for the guys. You know, we just looked at like we were styling and profiling, you know?
Yeah, it looks like the early 90s. Yeah. We got that swag on and everything.
Got that nice swerve.
All right, but
feel like I was going to the Copacabana.
Yeah, hey. Oh man, you know what? I'm afraid of looking back at the picture and see how I look like. I'm suspect myself, but but further back, Madison Square Garden, your dad, and everybody's anticipating on what you're gonna say. So by all means, you got the floor, my man.
All right, thank you. Okay. Protective, strong, funny, loving, supportive, provider. These are just some of the characteristics that my dad had. There's plenty more. I can be here all day with that. But I just want to give you just an overview of who this man was, especially in my life. Okay? He was my doctor. You know, when I was hurt, whether it be physically or emotionally, he was there for me. Okay. He was my trainer. Okay. When growing up, being a scrawny little kid, he made sure that, hey, I'm going to bulk this boy up, get me the weights and train me and everything like that. You know, he was my Santa Claus. You grow up, saying that Santa Claus is going to get you this, but, as you get older, the truth, and he was definitely that. He was my teacher, you know. He taught me a lot about life, and one thing that always stuck with me in my life was that he taught me that never let a day go by without you learning something. Then because if you don't, then you just wasted a day. Okay. And he especially taught me how to play chess. I mean, bless that man's heart. I mean, he know how to play the game of chess. And I think in my whole lifetime, I beat him one time, but I hold on to that victory. But this man was a very, very great teacher. And at times he was my friend, when I needed that, he was there for me, he was also my disciplinarian, I mean, when I did something wrong, hey, I had to pay the consequences, but he did it out of love. I could see sometimes it hurt him to do what he had to do, but it had to be done. And I thank him for that. I'm very appreciative that he gave me that discipline that I needed, because I wouldn't be the man that I am today if it wasn't for him doing that. But most of all, he was my father. Here's a man who grew up without a father in his life. His father left him when he was a young boy. So I could just imagine the things that, he went through in his life, the troubles that he got himself into because he didn't have that father figure. I was fortunate enough to have him in my life. And even though I know he wasn't a perfect dad, but he was there for me every single day of my life, through my good times and through my bad times. And I am very appreciative of that, and being a young boy growing up, we loved wrestling. Wrestling was a thing together. We did a lot of great things together and watched a lot of shows together, a lot of father-son times. But yeah, he loved wrestling, and to hear some of the stories about his favorite wrestlers, I mean, I give you some examples of his favorite wrestlers, like the Polish Power, Ivan Putski, the Magnificent Morocco, and he changed his name later to The Rock, Don Morocco. Of course, the Macho Man, Randy Savage. One of his favorite tag teams was the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal. He loved those two, and he always tried to emulate them, with their voices and everything like that. He loved Dusty Rhodes. That was one of his other favorites. Bruno Sammartino. I mean, I know I'm going a little way back, but that was his generation. That was his time, and he told me stories about people like this, Jesse the Body Ventura, so those wrestlers I got to hear stories about. And some of them I got to watch, and got to see them wrestle in the ring and see their performances. And I got a better understanding of them because of my dad telling me stories, of when he used to watch them and like that. But, watching it on TV and actually going to a live event is two totally different things. So I want to share a little story with you, that was very near and dear to my heart. Okay. So there was always a sense of anticipation and innocence about growing up in the 80s. Okay. And Saturday mornings. Not only did I enjoy a nonstop list of cartoons, but it was also capped off with WWF superstars of wrestling. Okay. Growing up, my mom would tell me stories about times when she was a young girl watching wrestling with her dad. Well, I was fortunate to be in the same situation with my dad. Wrestling really didn't grow as a passion for me until January 23rd, 1984, when Hulk Hogan faced the Iron Sheik for the WWF Championship title at Madison Square Garden. Now, growing up in New York City, Madison Square Garden was the Mecca arena for the WWF. The first WrestleMania was held there, and later on, the 10th and 20th edition. So, in honor of the Father's Day, I would like to share with you, the audience, one particular memory I ever had with my dad. We've shared now many memorable moments. However, this one stood out above the rest. On Monday night, January 27th, 1986, Madison Square Garden was hosting a WWF live event. Now, back then, we didn't have cable, so we had to watch wrestling on Saturday mornings and the original Saturday main events on local channels. So how did I know the WWF was coming to Madison Square Garden? Well, the newspaper. Yeah, that's right. When you wanted to know or find out anything, you had to buy the newspaper and look at the events happening. However, I didn't think much of it until my dad, he pulled a fast one on me. He surprised me with tickets to the live event. So here's a man who would do anything for me. Okay. Looking back, he went out of his way to make this night happen. Getting those tickets was not an easy task. Having to travel to Manhattan to buy the tickets, not knowing what was available, and making sure you had the cash on hand made it very daunting. However, as a young boy, to see a father's love be put into action, I mean, that was very priceless, especially on a school night. No matter what my dad went through in life, putting a smile on my face and spending time with me was his mission, and he truly succeeded. So that night we talked and laughed and had a great conversation about what we were about to experience together. And as we entered the garden, my dad purchased a wrestling program, and in it was a lineup for the night. We already knew about the main event prior to the whole thing, but to see what was going on and who was going to be there that night made it more exciting. So names like Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, Big John Studd, Junkyard Dog, Pedro Morales, Terry Funk, which is some of the names. And Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse the Body Ventura was on commentary that night. So let's get to the main event, okay? Hulk Hogan was defending his WWF title against the Macho Man Randy Savage. This match was intense, but even before the bell rang, my dad told me prior to the match that the Macho Man was going to win. I completely disagreed. I told him, how can Hogan lose? He was like a superhero to us kids. He was our champion. He was the face of the WWF. He trained. He said his prayers. He ate his vitamins. Hogan cannot be beaten. Well, I think Hogan didn't get the memo that night. Hulk Hogan entered the ring, and before the bell rang and the match started, Savage was all over Hulk Hogan. I mean, just pounding away. I mean, Macho Man still had his robe on and started choking the Hulkster with his own bandana and his own shirt. Okay. I mean, and even beat Hulk Hogan with the belt. Okay. But Hulk Hogan turns the table, mocking the Macho Man wearing his shades, and commenced to beat down on Savage. This match was so physical. Savage got busted open and blood was everywhere. Back and forth, these two superstars went, and back and forth, my dad and I went. Fans were cheering and fans were booing, but it was exciting. And the end result, the Macho Man Randy Savage won by a countout because Miss Elizabeth kept blocking Hogan from ramming Savage into the post resulting in Hogan hitting the steel post shoulder first. However, the title didn't change hands, and even after the match was over, these two superstars kept on going back and forth. Hogan putting Macho Man in the bear hug, and other superstars like Tiger Chung Lee, Iron Mike Sharp, and Danny Spivey, they had to separate these two superstars. So my dad and I both went home winners. For my dad, the Macho Man won the match. And for me, Hulk Hogan kept his belt. For the both of us, the most important win was that we both spent the evening together and had a good time. And even though it was super late and it was a long train ride home, that the tiredness did not allow us to ruin the evening. So I would like to just say, Dad, I know you're looking down from heaven, sending out smiles with days of sunshine and showers of love. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the everlasting memories that you've given me, your son, while you was here with me. And I thank you so much for that. I want to be able to share with you guys something that is near and dear to my heart. Okay, by no means am I a doctor or a psychologist or anything like that, but I want to share with you something that is personal to me. And the first thing is that I want you to understand that you have to realize that no matter how high you reach in life, you will always be their baby. Okay. And so what I mean by that, okay, is that you're never too old to get advice from them. Okay. They really may show you things that you have never considered. Okay. So you have to take that in consideration. As you get older, you can always still learn something, and since your dad is much older, he still has some wisdom there somewhere. Okay. So take that in consideration. Don't push him away thinking that you know it all, okay? Because he doesn't know it all, but he wants to pass knowledge down to you, okay? Another thing I've learned for myself was to learn to forgive. Okay, again, I've said, my dad wasn't a perfect person, okay? He had his flaws. However, I look over that. I I take the good and I outweigh the bad. Okay. And I learn to forgive. Because if you have or you hold on to a grudge against your dad or even your parents, whatever the case may be, you have to find a way to let that go because there's no upside to holding a grudge against your dad. Okay. So no matter what they've done in their life, no matter what they've done to you, if you just keep that grudge, you're going to regret it one day. Okay. Because remember, you're not perfect yourself. Okay. And you will want people to forgive you if you made mistakes. Okay. And it doesn't matter how many mistakes it is, you continue to forgive. Okay. Another thing I want to share with you that I've learned is to protect their confidence. Okay. Your dad gets older, but he still wants to have fun. He wants to act like a child. He has that, he wants to be young at heart. Let him. Never tell them or tell him, you're too old for this. That's kind of a confidence breaker. You know what I'm saying? Enjoy the moments. You never know when this is going to end. Okay. So if he wants to have fun, let him have fun. I know my dad has done that so many times, and that's what makes him so fun. He made him so funny with our family, just the things that he would do, the antics, that he has, or the jokes that he would have. It was just very comical, but it was everlasting moments that I would never forget. And we've always had this thing, in our family, as far as who was the funniest person in our family. And I may have won that, but I know my dad was a very, very, very close second. This man will have you laughing. It was not even funny. Yes, it was though. And the last thing I want to share real quick is listen to them closely. Okay. And what I mean by that is that as they get older, they may need you. Okay. So don't push that away. Okay. Because when you push that away, then you're messing with their ego. Okay. And then they're going to feel like they can't come to you. Okay. As you as a child growing up, you came to your dad and you wanted him. But now the roles get reversed. Okay. And now he's going to be needing you. So be there for him as he was there for you. And so those are the four things that I've learned from my personal experience. Take it for what it's worth, in your life. I mean, like, you may not have a good relationship with your dad. I don't know. But like I said, going back to what I said, learn to forgive. Okay. And spend every moment that you have because tomorrow's not promised to any one of us.
Well said. I mean, well said, Hector. Um, just by you, ah, this is a good one, man.
Thank you. It was hard. I mean, I was very nervous, because it's been 3 years, and losing my dad to cancer, it wasn't fun. I was there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I want to thank my wife because I already had made plans to go see him when he was sick. And I told her, you know what, I'm going to buy a plane ticket to go to New York during Father's Day. But in her wisdom, she said, you may want to rethink that and maybe go earlier because you just don't know. And so when I took that into consideration, I said, yeah, you know what? You may be right. And she was right on point. Because when I went to go see my dad, I took a week's vacation to go see him, spend time with him, just to be there for him. And when I got there, I told him, Dad, I'm here for you. Whatever you want, whatever you need, I'm here for you. Just like you was there for me. And I know I cannot repay you for everything you've done for me. But with my time, being here with you, I'm hoping that it could be the least thing I can do. And it was hard to say because it was less than a day before I was going to leave that I told him, Dad, I got to get on the plane and go home. My flight is going to be leaving in several hours. He could not respond, but I know he heard me. And I knew he was at peace. And so he left and I was there, but it was joy. I know he wasn't suffering no more. And I didn't have to go home with any regret. I tell people, and I don't mind sharing my story. That week being the last week being with him of his life was the toughest thing I've ever done in my life. And I've served in the military for 10 years. I've done 4 tours. I've seen a lot. I've done a lot. Okay. But taking care of my dad was the toughest thing I've ever had to do. And I could just imagine what he had to go through taking care of me as a child growing up, teaching me and, guiding me in the right direction. But I would never trade it for the world, that experience I've had, and even with his dying days, this man was still a clown. I mean, he was still funny and he was still having me laughing. I mean, it was never a dull moment with that man. And I love him for that, and 3 years later, it still hurts, it's still fresh, but I keep on to holding on to all the memories, and that's what you have to have, but if you still have your dad with you,
Mm.
cherish every single moment, okay? Because you don't want to regret nothing later in life. So,
Well said. And I mean, our peers, Frank, who's also listening in, um, this is what he had to say was, Hector, your story is very touching, and believe it or not, it does. It makes me reminisce of stuff that I'm doing with my dad. And your sister also wrote, beautiful, Hector, I love you. Um,
I love you too, sis.
so you have the family in tears right now, but with joy. Um, and that's what the Father's Day special is all about. Just reminiscing. I mean, even those that didn't grow up with fathers, that
Yeah,
moms have played both roles,
yes, yes,
they're
definitely.
too. Um, but what's intriguing? How old were you when your dad took you to Madison Square Garden?
I was 11 years old. I was going to turn 12 that year, but it was the beginning of the new year. So I was only 11 years old when we went to that wrestling match. And especially being on a school night, I was like, wow.
Yeah, it's a Monday night, so yeah. I mean, I don't know. Well, did your mom say anything? I mean, did she have any concern that you got school the next
No,
day?
no, she was good with it because I shown them and I proved to my parents that, you know, as long as I do what I'm supposed to do in school and keeping up with the grades and stuff like that, that you can have anything you want, so you could say that's just a bit of a reward, you know what I'm saying? Because I did what I had to do with my grades and my chores and whatever else that was asked of me. You do
Right.
what you was asked of you, you will get rewarded. So
So your dad went out of his way to Manhattan, and I started laughing when you were mentioning about the newspaper. Back then there was no internet. Unless you paid attention 24/7 on the radio, uh,
hmm
pretty much you get the daily newspaper delivered, whether the guy just threw it at you or whatever.
yeah.
But but for your dad, when did he tell you he was planning it? Was this a big surprise? I mean, when
It
did you find out you were actually going to Madison Square Garden?
that day when he came with the tickets.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
because when like when I said in my story, when you want to find something out, even like when we wanted to go to the movies,
Hmm.
okay, we bought the newspaper and you start looking through and then start looking at all the different theaters and all the different movies and the show times. So that's what happened. I looked through the sports sections. I looked to see what the Yankees were doing or the Knicks or the Giants, because that was my internet, was the newspaper, looking at the standings and stories. So, but there's also little bits and pieces of what's going on in Madison Square Garden. And when the WWF was coming to town, they will post it on there and they will sometimes give you the lineup or they'll just give you a main event or something like that. And so I just brought it up. Nothing, didn't think nothing of it.
Hmm.
Just going on with my daily life. But for him to go and just say, I'm going to go see what's available and get those tickets and to surprise my son. Yeah.
You're
It was
talking about
great.
availability. And you're right. It's hard to try to pick and choose exactly where you're sitting at. But where were you sitting at in the garden?
Um, right where the main entrance was towards the right of us. So we was pretty much sitting at the top. So you got the lower level floors. And then as you start going up a little bit, we was like towards the middle. So we had pretty good seats. And when we look over to our right side, we see the entrance way where all the wrestlers are coming out. So if anybody knows about WWF and how the camera view was on Saturday mornings where the wrestlers coming out. We would just, all the camera had to do was go to the right, and we would have been sitting, like, you would have been right there viewed. So yeah, we had very good seats.
Okay. You mentioned a lot of wrestlers that your dad liked and stuff like that, and you were mentioning Hulk Hogan. He was pretty much unbeatable. At least we thought he was unbeatable. I mean,
Yeah.
I was doing my vitamins too, and everything else, and my prayers and everything.
I've even had, I don't know if you remember, but they actually had this poster with a workout and the WWF blue weights. I mean, it was all Hulk Hogan. This is all the Hulkster back in the 80s, you know. So we've had that. I had that, you know, and so yeah, you know, that's who I really kind of looked up to, you know, like Hulk Hogan, you know, and but man.
I also see that you have those 2 championship belts behind you. You care to share those belts?
Yeah, well, this one right here, this bottom one, I always share on our Hard Hitting Wrestling show, you know, because I'm a big fan of the Intercontinental title, especially the old style. So, you know, I'm going to show that off. But this belt right here is very special, near and dear to my heart, because it was another wrestling event in Madison Square Garden that my dad took me to, and he bought this for me as a gift. Actually, this was 1988. It was on October 24th, so that was actually like 6 days after my birthday. Okay, so I just turned, I don't know if you do the math, 14 years old, I would say. I just turned 14 a week earlier. So my dad surprised me now for another event to Madison Square Garden, WWF. And this time, you know, he's going to act like the kid, because at that time, the WWF champion was the Macho Man Randy Savage. He had this belt, but he had a big order because he was going up against Andre the Giant that night.
Oh,
so,
man.
Yeah, but it still turned out good because Macho Man won by disqualification. So, hey, it was a win-win. Hey, but this belt, I would never get rid of it. It's just a mental, you know, thing for me that my dad had purchased for me. So at one time, it did fit around my waist. But now,
here we go.
yeah, now it might fit around my arm right now.
Arroz con habichuela right there, huh?
There you go. Two plates.
Hey, some of the wrestlers that you mentioned about, man, I had to go back, and I totally forgot. And the one superstar that you had mentioned, Chung Lee. Am I saying that? Yeah, Tiger Chung Lee. I remember. I hated that guy, man. He was always heel. I didn't like any heel. Back then, it was very hard for somebody to go from heel to babyface unless you were like the Randy Macho Man Savage.
Yes.
So
I think he really perfected that right there back in that era. But Tiger Chung Lee, I remember him having tag team matches with Mr. Fuji.
Yes.
You know, they were a tag team. But I know before then, Mr. Fuji was a bad man because he was a former tag team champion a little before that time. So I mean, when I came on the stage with the wrestling, I didn't think Fuji was really nothing with Tiger Chung Lee. So, you know.
Right.
Yeah, those are some good days, man.
80s was good. I mean, I look at the 80s now and I'm like, man, them graphics was terrible.
Yeah. We can laugh about it now.
Cartoons and stuff, and now how everything's changed, more high definition and everything. And wrestling's changed too. I mean, it's more athletic than what it was before. And man, I wish I was at Madison Square Garden. You know, and that's one of my checklists. Now that I'm out and free to do all the things I need to do now, to go to Madison Square Garden. I know they do it annually at the day after Christmas. So hopefully this year they can make it happen, because there's always a big surprise that happens the day after Christmas.
Yeah.
Hector, your story, again, it touched me. Talking about everything you've done with your dad, I reminisce of things I've done with my dad. And I'm sure that everybody else that was tuning in too did the same. Very touching, and I thank you, really thank you from the bottom of my heart for you to share your story to all the listeners and viewers and stuff. And take that, man. For everybody else, just take that advice. Don't leave things for granted. If you got that time to spend with your parents, mom, dad, or whoever, don't procrastinate, don't wait, because sometimes you tend to work, and work gets in the way with a lot of things, and then next thing you know, you be ended up wishing like, hey, I wish I did this and I wish I did that. And for you, Hector, to have all those memories, I mean, it's what makes you who you are today. And I thank your parents for meeting you, man. You're my other big brother, my brother from another mother.
I really do appreciate that, and I also have the last Father's Day gift I purchased for him was a bracelet with the New York Mets on it.
Mhm.
And he was a big, big avid Mets fan. I mean, he's seen all their World Series that they've been in and won. And I still have that bracelet to this day. And even though I'm a diehard Yankee fan, but I'll make sure that Mets bracelet will always be with me because it reminds me of my dad,
Mhm.
and that one. And I know this is not wrestling, but the moment that we shared in 2000 when the New York Mets played the New York Yankees in the World Series, it's just things like that, man. It's like, wow, don't take it for granted, and you have older parents, you have an older dad, take the time to call them. Take time from your busy schedule, because I know you may have your own family and you have to deal with your wife and your kids because you're a father yourself. But if your father's still alive, reach out to him, call him just to see how he's doing, see if he needs anything, And so, yeah, take that time.
And talking about fathers, you yourself are a father, raising
Yeah.
up your wife with your three girls.
Mm,
So that's a handful over there.
yeah, it is.
so,
It is.
so I have a little small tribute for you. It's not much, uh, but it's just an appreciation. Hector, thank you so much for not only being the host of this show, for taking the time to do a tribute. If for everybody else, a happy Father's Day. I know it's next week, but every day is a Father's Day. Every day it's a Mother's Day, and every day is a Christmas. And so, just like what you reiterating what you said, man. If you can't see them, call them. You know, not wrong. Just three simple words and just tell them I love you.
Exactly.
Hey, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening and watching the Hard Hitting Wrestling Show. Visit hhwshow.com for all the sports entertainment of wrestling and other sports podcasts. We'll be back tonight to discuss the post reaction on tonight's pay-per-view event, WWE Backlash. We're also going to talk about one other topic that happened last Friday on SmackDown, the new Intercontinental Champion, AJ Styles. And yes, Hector will rub it in because out of everybody on my show, he was the only one that picked AJ Styles. So, well, Hector Vasquez and myself, take care, everyone. Happy Father's Day. And here's that tribute. And thank you, Hector, for all that you do.
Thank you.